if I take an investment at any point in it, I would have had to share some equity. I would have had to answer to someone, but it would have also probably helped me get to a point faster. But I think bootstrapping, it allowed me to make important mistakes. It allowed me to work with the bare minimum. Maybe those life lessons are tangible, intangible, we don't know, but they exist. And I think by bootstrapping it, when you do eventually have capital and whatever, I'm still trying to be as shrewd as possible.
Uzair, finally, thank you for blessing me with your time today.
Only a pleasure.
How would you rate your overall well-being on a scale of 1 to 10? And maybe give me a reason why.
Sure, I think it depends what time of the day or what part of the week. But if you had to average it out, I would say probably 8, maybe 7. Yeah.
Is your well-being something that you prioritize, like running all these different businesses?
Definitely. So I try to invest in myself a lot, like eating the right food, taking the right supplements, going to gym, having a good gym membership. For example, I go to Silo, which is more like a spa experience than a gym, because you get all the extras. And, I think all of that just helps. If I can go sit in a nice jacuzzi for half an hour after training, definitely settles your mind a bit and lets you disconnect for a little bit, So wherever I can spend a little bit of money to help me cool down, I'll definitely take that opportunity.
And speaking of spending that money on things that you prioritize, it seems like you prioritize health. And is that something that you had to learn with the demand of running businesses? How did you decide what to prioritize?
Yeah, so I think when I was a student, and it's also stressful times as a student, I was eating badly, not getting the correct sleep, and I think that just had an effect on my productivity. So as time went on, I made it a mission to try and eat cleaner, get a routine in terms of sleeping earlier, waking up earlier, and making sure I get enough exercise in the week, making sure I have enough time spent socially with friends just to get your mind off of things. So yeah, I think it's been a bit gradual.
Before we get into the business stuff, why do you do what you do?
The main reason, quite frankly, is to put food on the table and support my family. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's why we're in business. But why I do the specific business that I do is because I think the main business being Riyp, which is trading of fruit and vegetables, is I think it gives you a bit of a legal rush that you can take, because it's high stakes, it's high risk, it's high reward. It needs to be moving fast. There's a lot of moving pieces. So when that deal hits your table and you can implement it successfully, I think it gives you that little bit of a burst, which not many other things give you legally, if I can put it that way.
And growing up, were you exposed to entrepreneurs? What made you want to pursue business entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I think being Indian, firstly, I think it's in our culture that our great grandparents and even their generations before them were shopkeepers or had some sort of entrepreneurial traits. They In my family especially, there weren't many professionals. I mean, I'm the first in my bloodline to get a degree, which means that everyone else was kind of just free roaming. And my grandfather, he started selling. His first business was selling tomatoes on the streets in Sophia Town in Johannesburg, and then he got a shop. And my father also was, for the most part, a shopkeeper. And I spent a lot of time in their businesses. I mean, after schools, on weekends, you were in the shops. And I think it's I was a staff member there from a young age, trying to sell sneakers or whatever it may be. And I think as you spend time in those environments, you pick up on things consciously or subconsciously, and I think that helps. And then it also, the second part is a need for money, desperation. If you need to eat and there's no food, you're going to go hunt something. That's what our ancestors did. And I think I wasn't I didn't have massive allowances or anything. So from a young age, I wanted to have my own supplement to my allowance or my income. And I think I started selling things from the age of 7 years old at school. And I think if you start something very young, naturally it's just going to progress and you're going to get better at it. And yeah, I think that's how it came to this point.
And back in 2016, How did you begin? Firstly, where did you get the idea to start Riyp? And could you walk us through how you actually started?
Sure. So a lot of people ask that question, and the answer is I didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey, let me sell fruit," because that's just a very arbitrary thing to want to do. But as mentioned, I think I've been in business from 7 years old, and as I got older, the businesses got bigger and more complex. And the one just before this was importing rice from Pakistan and India. And through that, I had a contact who wanted pineapples in Saudi Arabia, and I started honoring those orders. And I thought exports versus imports, the exports going to win. Rice is saturated, fruit maybe not as much. And then the business basically transformed from importing rice to exporting fruit. And I did a few deals to the customer in Saudi Arabia, saved some money, and I was in university at the time. And then I used that money to, I first did the research, which markets does South Africa export fruit to, which countries. And then I traveled to those countries, went door to door, met the buyers in those countries, did the research on what their requirements are, and then came back to South Africa and started visiting farmers to try and meet those requirements. And then I had the customer and I had the farmer, and I put them together, and that's how the business has been growing. And it's just been consistently evolving from there.
And could you just go dive a bit deeper into what Riyp actually does in terms of your service offerings and products?
Sure. So Riyp is purely a fruit and vegetable trading company. So we trade fruit and vegetable. It started by only using South African farmers and exporting that fruit to 40 countries, from Africa to Middle East, Europe, all over the show. Over the last few years, we've also been buying fruit from other markets, and then supplying those to our customer base. So in essence, Riyp is a fruit and vegetable trading company.
And how did you source your farmers?
So again, it was more research based. So I knew my customer in the UK, he wanted oranges, and then I did the research of which are the big orange producing regions of South Africa. And let's take Western Cape for example. Citrusdal, named after citrus, is one of them. And yeah, I decided to then go there and do some research and stay there for a little bit. And people see the now of it, but it was very difficult doing that. It's not as easy as just going there. You needed money. And going a little bit off topic, when I was trying to find customers, there's a big fruit show in Berlin called Fruit Logistica, and I went there in the very early days with 3,000 rand in my pocket. Now you're going to another country for 7 days with 3 grand in your pocket. The first night we were there, I had to entertain some customers, and that dinner bill was 2 grand. So I had 6 days left with $1,000. But by God's grace, it lasted me. The first time I sent fruit to Qatar, uh, I wanted to personally be there to make sure it arrived well. And the warehouse I sent it to was about 40 minutes to an hour away from Qatar's main city, Doha. And we finished offloading that container at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd gotten a lift there. And there were no taxis, there were no Ubers at that time at 4 o'clock in the morning. Again, this is a few years ago, before Qatar had the World Cup and had all the extra infrastructure. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had to walk from the warehouse, which is 40 minutes by car away from Doha, back to my hotel. And people don't necessarily know that I had to do all of that. When I went to Dubai to see customers there, I just broken my leg before that. Had no money really for taxis to take me around, whatever. So I got one lift to the fruit market, and the fruit market's huge there. I had to go from customer to customer, and we're talking about 50-degree weather with a broken leg. So there's been all those challenges that I had to come into place before I could sit back and just deal out of my laptop.
What is your mindset around continuing regardless of all these challenges?
I think it was more desperation. It was just, I have to make this work, otherwise I don't have an income. Yeah, I think with anything in life, if you're at the point of nothing to lose, you will always persevere through whatever challenge there is.
Just on this topic, in terms of, because you were bootstrapping, right? You
Yeah.
didn't go and source investors and actually raise capital. What challenges do you think that entrepreneurs face bootstrapping versus actually funding? Is there pros and cons of both?
So I did get a bit of investment, but it wasn't investment into the business. It was more trade finance. So I had a deal. I needed money to fund the deal, and then I would conclude the deal and pay the investor out. And I tried as fast as possible to not use that by building up my own capital, so I didn't need to use outside investment. But to answer your question, I think if you, so I own my company 100%. If I take an investment at any point in it, I would have had to share some equity. I would have had to answer to someone. Um, I think those are the negatives, but it would have also probably helped me get to a point faster. But I think bootstrapping it allowed me to make important mistakes, allowed me to work with the bare minimum. Like I said, being in a foreign country with 1,000 rand in your bank account. And maybe those life lessons are tangible, intangible, we don't know, but they exist. And I think by bootstrapping it, when you do eventually have capital and whatever, I'm still try to be as shrewd as possible.
And did you ever consider to raise capital, or was it just because of the ownership that you did not want to raise capital?
So raising capital is still a debate I have with myself on a daily basis, because I get approached by guys quite often to say, let's do something. Do you need capital? And definitely, I think there's a point where, a 50, 100 million rand injection into the business could exponentially change the business. But I'm so scared of taking money because I don't want to lose money, that I would wait for the point of perfection, which is maybe a good or bad thing. I don't know. And I think, yeah, it just depends when the timing is right.
And back to the business. So you mentioned that you were kind of hustling, going customer to customer in all these countries. But I want to backtrack a bit. How did you actually expand from Qatar to other international companies and get those customers in those countries?
So let's take Qatar, for example, because that wasn't a market of mine. And I'll never forget this day. I was at home watching the news, and I saw that the neighboring countries of Qatar, being Saudi, Dubai, UAE, whatever, they've just implemented a trade embargo on Qatar. And I started doing some research quickly on my laptop, and I saw, okay, Qatar is another desert country, right? They don't really have much fertile land. It's difficult for them to produce their own food. So where were they previously getting their fruit and veg from? And we saw that they were previously getting their fruit and veg from their neighbors, from Saudi, from United Arab Emirates, either produced by those countries or imported and then re-exported. And I said, but now if these guys have a trade embargo, where are they going to get their fruit from now? Because now they can't get it from their neighbors. So the next day I booked a flight and I went there. I didn't know anyone there. But I went to the market and I said, there has to be an opportunity here because these guys need to eat and they can't do it the traditional way, which is buying from their neighbors. So they're going to have to find ways. And some will say luck, some will say blessings, but I just met someone who by chance had a contact in fruit imports. And he took me, we had to sit down and we started doing business there. And as we did business in Qatar, that business grew and I met new contacts and whatever. And it's actually slowed down quite a bit because things have gone back to normal. So I think they're importing again from Qatar, but I mean from their neighbors. But yeah, that's basically how we do it. It's just, I think, intuition, trying to spot opportunities when they are, and then actually having the balls to hustle it. Because I could have easily sat at home and said, maybe someone's going to contact me, maybe let me send an email. But I had to book the flight the next day and go. I had no money to do it, but I took the chance.
Yeah, what I'm getting from that is also a lot of risk taking. I mean, it's risk taking, so you don't know the outcome.
That's true. I think, again, it comes down to a point of desperation because now with a big customer base, would I take those risks now? Maybe because I have more capital to risk. But if I had customers then, would I have taken the risk then? I don't know. So I think, risk taking is very subjective to the conditions around it. You can't just say I'm risk averse or I'm pro risk, whatever it is. I think you need to look at your overall circumstances and say, does it make sense to take the risk? What are the mitigations? So I mean, my business specifically, talking about risk, is I always joke with people and say, in my business, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you don't lose, because you will always lose money in fresh produce. So I have to sit every day when I get a deal on my desk and say, is my risk worth the profit I'm going to make? What are the factors around it? Okay, it's mangoes, for example. Mangoes are very temperamental fruit. I've got a guy in Saudi Arabia who wants it. It's going to take 21 days. What if the fruit gets there and it goes off? is it worth me then sending a 1 million rand container there and the fruit goes there and it's off? Is it worth the 50 grand I was maybe going to make, you know? So I think each and every deal, each and every decision must be looked at holistically.
And speaking of this specific challenge, what other challenges do you have when you are exporting fruit and vegetables?
So the frustrating thing is I can do everything right on my side, but we can have so many external factors. For example, I can load a container of fruit, the fruit can be excellent quality, but we can have a port strike in Cape Town and the port can be offline for 2 weeks. And now we've got grapes in there which are worth 1 million rand and they're now stuck there for 2 weeks. By the time it gets to destination, it's now not 3 weeks that it's getting there, it's 5, 6 weeks that it's getting there. And the quality of the grapes are not going to be what you paid for, what the customer is expecting. So you're going to lose money. So I think the frustrating part is this: there's a lot of external factors that determine success in the business. Exchange rates is another thing, climate, on the effect it has on the fruit. I might want to load grapes tomorrow, but if the farm has rain today, we don't take the load because it's risky. I've lost out on a potential deal. Even though the deal is there, the money is there to do the deal. So there's a lot of external variable factors that affect the success of it, which is the frustrating part.
And in terms of quality, how do you ensure that consistent quality from farmers?
So what's nice is South Africa has what we call PPECB. It's a Perishable Exports Board, which inspects the fruit before. The farmers also pack to an international standard. So we try our best to monitor how good the fruit is, but there's always the risk. So even if on the surface of it, it looks 100% perfect, based on all the tests, based on international standards, there's still a risk it gets there not in ideal condition. So yeah, we try to just do the research, have technical knowledge on the fruit, those sort of things.
And in terms of scaling to other countries, what challenges are there when you scale? Because now you are expanding at a rapid rate. Your unit economics might change. Like, what other challenges would you experience, or did you experience?
Sure. So I think it's just also saturation, right? So Europe isn't a big market of mine because most of the other exporters already go there, and a lot of the farmers go to Europe directly. So am I adding value there? Maybe not as much as I'm adding value of sending fruit to Sudan or Burkina Faso, So I think the challenge is saturation in the market. I think also the pricing, right? So why it makes sense in Dubai is you've got high income earners there who can pay a lot of money for good fruit, while in India it might be a different story, So those are the other considerations. I think each and every market is different each and every year. So again, it's just being on top of things and monitoring when the opportunity presents itself to make sure you're ready to take it.
And from a demand point of view, so for example, if you're currently doing 30 countries and overnight or in a couple of weeks it changes to 60 countries, your systems in place, will that be able to handle that scale and expansion at that rate?
Sure. So I don't think it will ever be that exponential. So based on that, if we had to do 2 countries or 3 countries, even 4 countries new per year, yes, we could handle it. But I don't think it'll double overnight. It's just not the business for that. There's too much red tape globally in terms of certifications, requirements, etc. for that to happen. So I think that comes back to what we spoke about earlier, which was with the investment. So if I had to double from 30 to 60 countries, I would need the investment because I would need bigger teams. But if I had to just do 2 countries a year, I think it depends on the pace at which the scale happens. Then I would probably gradually have the systems in place. But to answer your questions, I don't have the systems in place to go from 30 to 60 countries overnight.
I've noticed that that's a mistake with entrepreneurs wanting to scale too quickly, is not having those systems in place. And it's a question that I regularly ask, like, what besides systems and processes, what else is key and vital for things not to break when you do scale? And common answer was like, we don't know. We can have systems, we can have processes, we can have the tech in place, but if it's, for example, fintech, you're doing another 1,000 customers, what does your customer service look like to be handle that amount of new users, that sort of thing?
I think my answer to that would be knowledge, because when you're scaling 1,000,000%, there's going to be issues. But I think if you have the knowledge on how to deal with those issues, that's going to help your scale.